strong. And I think that's what the West Tigers fans are applauding at the moment.
Absolutely.
As much as it hurts, it's a real statement. And I could see that happening on Monday night because I just said it's untenable.
Hi there, welcome to Six Tackles with Gus on a drama-charged week in Rugby League. We are brought to you with thanks to our friends at The Tab today. The Tigers take a hardline stance in the wake of Lachlan Galvin's decision to leave the club. Galvin and his father have issued a joint statement as well. We'll have a look at that and maybe read between the lines, but there is a lot going on in the wonderful game of Rugby League. Welcome, Phil Gould.
Matthew Thompson, how you doing?
Fantastic. You well?
I am extremely well. Thank you very much.
You've come bouncing in here this morning full of beans.
Yeah, I had a little jaunt to the north coast yesterday, jumped on a plane, went to Coffs Harbour.
Right.
Spoke to a young player and his father. So it was a little day out for me yesterday.
Right.
Yeah.
Get a
Never stop.
Propeller plane?
Yeah. Little Dash 8 or whatever they call it.
A bit dicey sometimes, those things.
I
How's it go?
I fly in anything. It doesn't really worry me. I remember I had a trip one time. I had to go to Victoria to do a guest speaking role for Adidas. They were having a conference out somewhere in Victoria. I didn't know where it was. What I had to do was fly to Melbourne, and then we were getting a flight to another area. I had no idea. I just jumped in. So we flew to Melbourne, and I had to walk around to the private area where there were private planes to fly somewhere else. And when I got around there, there was a little lady sitting behind the counter. And I mean little. She was little, very little. And I walked in and I said, hi, I'm not sure if I'm in the right place. I'm supposed to be getting a flight to so-and-so and so-and-so. She said, yep, come with me. She said, you're Phil. I said, yeah. She said, come with me. So we walked out the back and we walked through the back door and we walked out onto the tarmac. And I said, where are we going? He said, we're going to the plane. I said, oh, okay, right. So I've got my bag with me and we're walking out on the tarmac and we're walking past these planes and we kept walking and walking and walking. And I said, where are we going? She said, to the plane. I said, where is it? She said, over there. And I looked in the distance and it was this little single engine, single propeller little plane, like just a two-person plane.
Oh, it's you two.
And I said, right. I said, who's flying it? She said, me. I said, you're flying it? She said, yeah. And we landed in a cow paddock.
What? Where was Adidas doing this function?
I was out somewhere, would have been southeast Victoria somewhere. We actually landed on a farm. And when we got there's Farmer Brown with his dog on the back of the ute, ready to drive me to the conference centre where they were having the conference. We got in this little two-seater plane and we flew all the way to this place and we landed in a grass paddock. And she slid all over the runway and yeah.
I flew to the Grafton races, it would have been 15 years ago. And it was one of those tiny little planes, but on the plane was Robbie Waterhouse and Blake Shin and a few other prominent racing people. And I've never been so convinced in my life we were all about to die. It dropped out of the sky and everyone started screaming and then it managed to and then it dropped out of the sky again. It was the worst turbulence in history. I'd resigned myself to the fact that I was about to die and a few prominent racing people were about to die with me.
Die with you, yeah. It's never ever really worried me. And I've been in helicopters, quite often been in helicopters. Back in the old days at Channel 9, we used to finish the Sunday footy show. The footy show would be on from 12 to 1. And then we'd have to get to Newcastle or Wollongong or Penrith to call the game. They'd just throw us in the helicopter.
Did you get a helicopter to Penrith?
Yeah, Channel 9 helicopter would just land on Howell Oval.
How good.
Yeah, but down to Newcastle. I used to love the Newcastle trip.
Yeah, you told me about that.
We'd take off from Channel 9 at Willoughby and we'd fly out and he'd take us out past the Harbour Bridge and the Opera House and up through the heads. And then we'd go to Newcastle, virtually about 300 metres off the beachfront, right? And with his nose virtually 10 feet above the water and we'd go all the way up the ocean. It was spectacular, it was. And yeah.
You got big balls, Gussie.
When I think about it, yeah.
I've never been in a helicopter.
It's never ever worried me. Well, Dad was a policeman, and then one of his postings late in his career was setting up the police air wing at Sydney.
Oh, yeah.
So, so I got to travel in little planes and little things. And I've been to stud farms on little single-engine planes and been to golf on helicopters. I've been very lucky in life, I guess.
You have been lucky, and You get to spend Wednesday morning.
I will say when we landed in Coffs Harbour yesterday, he put the plane down with a bang.
Oh.
I mean, he had an hour to think about it and he stuffed it up. So
Right. Did you sign your player?
he's too young to sign. It was just some advice for him and his father.
Oh, it's good of you to fly up there to do that.
I think I'll be dead and gone when he plays NRL, but you got to keep moving, mate. You got to keep signing them kids. You got to keep building relationships.
So it's Easter weekend's always a big weekend of rugby league. Putting the drama aside, so Mitch Moses is back for his first game of the year.
Yep.
And then you're talking 70,000 plus for Bulldog Rabbit.
Certainly hope so.
How good?
Certainly hope so. Well, they're pretty good with the numbers. Like if you ask them how many we're going to get this week, they'll say 25 or 30,000. And from very early in the piece, they've said, we think, somewhere between 50 and 60. And to push it beyond that level and make sure that everyone can get in and do it, the Bulldogs have come up with a $10 ticket deal. So they're actually going to open up level 6, which never really gets opened up for anything other than, origins and grand finals and all that sort of thing. So the seating up there is just $10 a ticket, and Ticket Tech have come to the party. They've taken their commission off the top. So for $10 a ticket, you can take and people will be out at the show, so it'll give them a chance to come across and see the football in the afternoon. Hopefully it's a nice day and, Rabbit versus Bulldog should be an absolute big one.
Jared Rorea-Hargreaves has announced this year will be his last in rugby league. He'll go down as one of rugby league's greatest ever props.
Yeah, undoubtedly. Signed as a young fella. I think he was playing at Manly at the time. And he was plucked from Manly as a teenager across to the Rooster and put forward an extraordinary career and recognised by a number of the players who played at the Roosters during that time as the leader of the club, as the alpha male in the club. People you talk to around the Roosters talk about his training ethic, about his toughness and his professionalism, his mentoring, his kindness, his team-first mentality, and
Toughness.
You couldn't talk about more highly about an individual, given his body of work for the Roosters over a long period of time.
He'd have survived in the real tough days of the game, wouldn't he?
Yeah, he
like
could.
Blokes standing on heads and all that sort of
He
stuff.
could have played in the 70s and 80s. In fact, he looked like he was.
He would have loved it. He would have
At
loved
times
it.
he looked like he was. Yeah.
Well, with Victor Radley now sort of having found his inner peace, maybe his record for sin bins will remain intact. JWH.
Oh, yeah.
He may not be surpassed.
No, he had a parking space down at down at the Judiciary headquarters. He had his own parking space on Tuesday.
What a great career. Well played. Well played. Rory McIlroy, when he retires, will be considered among the greatest ever golfers.
Well, I'm glad you changed that, because when I saw the question on the sheet here, it was that he will retire the greatest golfer. He won't be the greatest golfer of all time, but his record speaks for itself. He's 35 years of age. He's now won all 4 majors. He's won every major tournament pretty much on the planet. What happened at the Masters on the weekend was one of the greatest sporting events I've ever seen. It was just gripping television, knowing what was at stake for him and the way it went about it. He hit 5 of the 6 greatest shots I've ever seen in Masters history. 5 or 6 of the greatest shots under pressure I've ever seen. And he hit 5 or 6 of the worst putts I've ever seen
it was unbelievable.
in my life. And I've been saying to you for years and years and years, I think he needs glasses.
You need to contact him.
I think he needs glasses on the green, because he just keeps missing putts by such a narrow margin. He is constantly shaving the hole from any distance. He can shave it from 2 feet. He shaves the hole. It's not as though he's missing
He
it.
wears glasses, actually.
Does he?
Yeah, he does.
I would imagine he wears contacts when he plays.
Well, maybe he doesn't.
But there is someone needs to line him up, honestly, because he's not even on the wrong line. And the last putt in regulation where he had 3 feet to win.
Oh, look like one of mine.
It never went anywhere near the hole, that one. He just missed it badly. And everyone knows that putt because we see that putt every year. And then the winning putt, when he hit it, I thought it's not going to reach the hole. Like he was absolutely frozen with nerves and anxiety the whole time, but he managed to get it done. In amongst all that was half a dozen of the greatest shots you'll ever see, ever.
Shot on 15 around the trees, the big draw that landed 3 feet from the hole was
Incredible.
unbelievable.
Incredible.
So there's two we won't talk too much about golf. There's two trains of thought. One, he almost tanked it, which is probably true, but he also had the mental strength to be able to pull it out of the fire when he nearly tanked it 3 or 4 times.
Yeah, I sent something to Cameron Ciraldo during the off-season, or might have been only a few weeks ago, around Rory talking about his mental toughness or how he's learned to train his mind. And I think it was in the previous tournament, which he won in a 3-hole playoff. Remember, he won in the 3-hole playoff. I think it was the tournament before he played in the Masters. And the second of the 3 holes played off was a par 3 across the water. And he told about how he was walking to the tee on that hole and he could see himself hitting it in the water. He could just feel he was going to hit it in the water. And then how he had to transition his mind and his attitude and his thought process to hit the shot. And he said, this is what I've learned to do over many, many, many years. Professional sportsmen talk about attitude control and mental control. And he had to draw on all of that during that last round, or even after the first round. I mean, he had 2 double bogeys in the first round. He was 4 under after 14 holes.
He'd given the lead away after the first hole on the last day.
Yeah, and he's the only golfer in history to have 4 double bogeys and win the Masters, ever. You just don't do that. Incredible.
Last one on this. The scenes when he won, when he walked all the way through the crowd and was embraced by everyone, was one of the best bits of sporting reaction I've ever seen. And a masterclass in broadcasting. Yeah. The commentators, from the time the putt went in and Jim Nance said what he has to say, did not say a word for another 10 minutes.
No, it was incredible. It was, sometimes you don't need to talk over the pictures. And we take notice of that because we're in commentary, but there was absolutely... The pictures themselves were telling the story. Meeting his family and meeting his manager and meeting his mates and his family.
And Shane Lowry comes out and gives him a big bear hug. How was that?
Shane Lowry comes out.
I want a hug from Shane Lowry.
Yeah, and then Justin Rose's wife comes out.
That was Justin Rose's wife?
That was his wife.
Oh, right.
That came out and gave him a hug. And, of course, they're great mates from the European Tour and Ryder Cup. And, in fact, it was one of the things, and we're talking too much about golf, but it was one of the things where he played with DeChambeau all day. There was an edginess about everything that was happening on. They were both uncomfortable with each other and playing, and there was obviously, now we know, no communication between the two. And not that they should worry about that, but I think there was an edginess there. As soon as Justin Rose walked onto the tee at the playoff and walked over and they just sort of embraced, I could see Rory was more comfortable. Straight away, he was far more comfortable in the partnership. And I think that helped him. He hit a perfect drive and a perfect iron and then the putt to win the tournament. I just felt like the whole publicity about he and DeChambeau was getting to them both at different times during the day. Rory was able to fight it off, but...
I don't know what DeChambeau is whinging about, saying he just refused to talk to me.
I don't think he was whinging.
Round of a major.
I don't think he was whinging about it. I think they asked him and he just said, no, he didn't talk to me, nor would he talk to you.
Well, he was a bit shirty, but anyhow. So Rory at 35 is one of 6 men in history to have won the career Grand Slam.
Yep, incredible.
Jaxon Purdue is a future Origin star.
Very talented young man. Coming through, he's always been seen as a half fullback, half 5'8" fullback. I think he can play any of those 3 positions extremely well, as most young fellas do to get their debut in first grade. Sometimes they've got to play out of position, and he's played the centre position so well they haven't moved him. But for his own development, I think he needs to be getting into one of those key positions sooner rather than later. Cowboys probably don't have the space to do that at the moment. But he's a real talent. There's no risk. He's a real talent.
He played fullback for the Queensland under 19s.
Yeah, we've seen him
last year.
We've seen him coming for some time.
Yeah. Well, I think undoubtedly Lachlan Galvin's an Origin star of the future. Gus has been touting that for a little while, but goodness, hasn't it hit the fan this week? So let's work backwards from the latest, shall we? Rumours that Galvin would be axed to the New South Wales Cup were confirmed yesterday when the West Tigers named Adam Dewey at halfback and Jerome Luai at 5'8" for the clash with Parramatta. Lachlan Galvin's playing for Wests. The decision came after senior players apparently met with Benji Marshall and said they just don't want Galvin in a team where he doesn't believe in the direction in which it's headed. I've had a look at the reaction of Tigers fans, and I don't look at social media very much anymore, but universally, Tigers fans have applauded the club's stance. Most of them saying that we're sick of being held captive and the club should not be walked over any longer. So they've applauded what Benji Marshall and the club have decided to do with respect to this. Lachlan Galvin and his dad issued a statement yesterday there's a lot in it, but I grabbed the part that I think caught most people's attention. Lachlan Galvin says, I just feel that as I move into an important period of my development as a half, that I continue to build my game at a different club. So this is Lachlan Galvin, after there was a few people saying that, well, maybe it wasn't Lachlan Galvin saying he doesn't rate Benji Marshall, maybe it was the manager. Well, Lachlan Galvin confirmed it in a statement. I know it might be hard for some people to understand, but I make this decision in the best interests of my career. And, of course, the news all started on Monday when Lachlan Galvin not just rejected a West Tigers offer to extend his contract, but didn't even want to hear it. The manager said, don't bother tabling this. We don't think he can get to where he needs to be under Benji Marshall's coaching. It's been quite a remarkable story. A lot to unpack, Gus. Firstly, is it right for anyone looking outside in to assume that by taking the course of action Lachlan Galvin and his management have done, that they've deliberately tried to blow up their relationship with the West Tigers?
Look, that could be one interpretation people might find. We spoke about this at length on 100% Footy because the story had just broken Monday afternoon, and my comments at that time were the thing I found most surprising about the whole thing was this statement that had leaked out of the meeting between the player manager and the club that Lachlan Galvin was not extending because he didn't have faith in his development under the club under Benji Marshall. Now, I expressed some sort of surprise at that, and in fact, whether or not I'd questioned whether or not that was coming from Lachlan's mouth, whether or not he would endorse that comment or whether or not that is just a statement from the player manager to West Tigers management as to why he's not going to stay. And remember, Lachlan Galvin's not looking to get out of his current contract. There's been no suggestion that he's asked for a release at all for this year or next year. None whatsoever. All he said is that we're not going to extend our contract here at the end of 26.
But there's a track record of him seeking releases from the club.
Who?
Lachlan Galvin.
Understand that, but he's not saying at the moment that's what he wants, right? He's prepared to play out his contract for the next 18 months. But we all know that that's going to be untenable. And that's what I said. Cameron Smith said this, and Cameron Smith took the player line. I don't think I want to play with a player that wants to question the coach. I found it, extraordinary that a player would endorse that publicly, particularly when he's playing for a coach. And that's just not how we operate in clubland. There are always disputes between a player and a club or a club and a player. Remember, clubs sack players too, and players sack clubs, and players want releases for various reasons, and some come in with compassionate reasons and some come in with other things, and some just don't turn up or perform and wait to be shipped on. There's a number of ways that they use to sort of end relationships. But
now, it doesn't often bubble to the surface like you correctly say.
Well, no, but, I would imagine... I don't know who actually made it public what was discussed in that meeting, but it started a hardline stance from the West Tigers. And the hardline stance in the end, I think, has come from the playing group, if we can believe what we read, that the senior players have heard what's happened and said, well, that's not our values here and we can't play with a player who thinks that way and you need to be dropped. If Benji Marshall came out and did that, you get the feeling maybe it's about Benji. Benji doesn't want it to make it look about him, but the players have actually supported the coach and said, well, that's not what we're about here. That's not what, and we don't want to play with Lachlan. Now, that's whoever decided to go down this course of action, whether it was Lachlan, whether it was his manager, whether it was his family, whatever it was, they've made the decision that they're not going to extend to the West Tigers, and they've made it very public now as to the reasons why. I'm surprised that he would come out and endorse that, but he has endorsed it, so it's his decision. Benji made him stand for, if we can believe what we read, Benji has made him stand in front of the group and make him explain why he wants to leave the club and got howled down. Like he's now at...
It's pretty amazing, isn't it?
He's now at loggerheads with the playing group.
Yeah.
I don't know for a young player how that's tenable at all. And whatever course of action, if this was devised by Lachlan or his parents or his manager, look what it's done. Look where it's placed him right now with the fans, with the playing group, and with the club. Every decision, everything we try to teach about players and everything we try to build about a culture of a club, and we talk about culture and all that, there has to be a club-first mentality. whatever is in the best interests of the club, whatever is in the best long-term interests of the club. It's written all over our walls at the Bulldogs and around the ground. Club first, team second, individual third. The individual comes last in all of this. That's the culture of our club, and that's what it takes, that unity and that connectivity to build the culture and the work ethic and the trust and the loyalty and the honesty that we can talk to each other in trusting each other comes from a club-first mentality, what is in the best interest of the club. Then it becomes what's in the best interest of the team. And we all understand the coaches have to make tough decisions, clubs have to make tough decisions, management make tough decisions. The individual comes third. It's not about the CEO. It's not about the general manager. It's not about the coach. It's not about the trainer. It's not about the doctor. It's about what's in the best interest of the club, then the team, then the individual comes third. And with this one, with this statement, they're putting the individual first. Lachlan is putting himself first over the rest. I found that, firstly extraordinary that would be endorsed, and also that it is untenable. It can't go on, and he's not gonna. It's not going to last.
Well, again, perhaps we're at a situation that has been almost made to order by his management, in that it is untenable, and therefore he's either going to languish in New South Wales Cup and waste 2 seasons of his career, or he's going to get a release for him, go to another club and earn a significant amount of money. I believe at the moment he's on about 250, 300 grand. Like, he's commanding $1 million a season at other clubs. So it's in the interest of his management to get him out of there to go to another club.
Yeah, if money was the first priority at this stage, Lachlan is saying it's his own personal development that's his priority at the moment. I don't think if in fact it was seen as strategy to create a situation where the club would let him go now, right? I don't think that they knew it would degenerate to this level, that within hours the senior playing group would divorce themselves from his comments and divorce himself from the young player and say, we don't want to play with him. Now, that's terrible. That's terrible for a young player to have the rest of the playing group say, like players often come in and have to tell their teammates they're leaving to go to another club. I'm leaving to go to another club because I'm being offered more money. It's for my family, etc. Everyone accepts that's a part of professional sport. I need to move because I need to go back to England. I need to move because I want to go and play in Australia. Like, we've all got reasons why we make decisions like that, and most of them are honest. It's about the money. I've got a really good offer. Everyone claps and says, good on you, mate. Well done. Congratulations for being honest. Let's get on with it for the rest of the year. All right? This is the first time I've ever seen it played out so publicly within hours that the playing group has said, well, if that's your attitude, we don't want you in the team. And that's terrible.
And he's come out and said, I don't rate the coach. That's the reason I'm going.
Well, yeah, and that's why the playing group has supported him, has supported the coach. And the club hasn't made that decision. Benji didn't make that decision. The senior player group took it out of his hands. They took it out of Benji's hands and said, we don't want to play with him.
Have you seen that happen before? Can you think of an instance where that's happened previously? Like maybe with some disciplinary issues?
Yeah, I think there have been many, many issues over a period of time where senior players may have gone to the coach and say, listen, this player's not living up to the values, or we can't trust this player, et cetera, et cetera. I think there have been any number of issues. And players, and that doesn't necessarily decide what the coach is going to do, but the coach will listen to his senior player group in that regard. There would have been countless, examples of that over the period of time where senior players have gone to the coach and say, listen, we can't trust this player, or this player needs a spell, or whatever it is. Yeah, 100%. But it never really makes the papers. In the end, the coach owns the decision on behalf of what's in the best interest of the club, the team. This is the decision we're going to make. The club, it's very, very rarely publicised that the playing group, you might see snippets of that in the media, and sometimes you see it and it's not true. Those decisions land with the coach. But this decision was taken out of the coach's hands. It was actually taken out of the club's hands because the senior player group have put their hand up and said, this is our decision. And that's terrible for a young player. That's terrible for any player. It's terrible for a young player.
Well, that's my next question. Where does this head for Lachlan Galvin? Now, the club has dug its heels in. Do you see they could conceivably not release him until could make him see out the rest of his contract not playing NRL football?
They could. They could. As you say, if he's on a meagre contract, he's actually really good value. And they can't replace him for another player with that money right at the moment. The first and foremost, right, today or even last night, first and foremost, as a club, the first thing I'd be worried about was his welfare. The first thing I would be worried about is how he's feeling about all this now. Even though we're at loggerheads and even though he said he doesn't believe in the direction of the club or he doesn't want to play for the club, you've still got a responsibility to him and his welfare. And this is don't underestimate how big this could be for a 19-year-old boy to suddenly have his teammates turn on him in this manner and to be – he may have anticipated that maybe they were going to drop me, the coach was going to drop me if I did whatever, but to have the teammates be behind that decision, that's big, all right? And that's – so my first concern would be for his welfare right at the moment in how he's now dealing with the fallout of this. And whether or not, I doubt in his wildest imagination he would have anticipated this. Even in the management or his parents who obviously endorsed this decision and this plan of action, I don't think they would have expected this sort of fallout straight away. I think, if it was a strategy being used to get him out of his contract in the short term so he can go somewhere next year, well, then to that extent it's probably backfired to where it is at the moment. Now, the end result might be that he gets a release from the Tigers and he can go and play somewhere else next year for big money. But that will have come at a cost. Yeah. That will have come at a significant cost to Lachlan, which is something he's going to have to work through and hopefully play his way out of going into the future.
They had no reason to say what they said. It has to be a strategic play. They didn't have to. Well, the manager didn't have to say, "I'm not interested in your offer."
Yeah.
He could have said, well, let's have a look at the offer and played the game and tried to keep things amicable. And he didn't have to say, Lachlan doesn't rate Benji, and Lachlan didn't have to come out in a statement yesterday and confirm that that's the reason. They didn't have to do that.
No.
So it's a deliberate course of action to spark some sort of response.
That's one interpretation. That's one interpretation. And from the club's perspective, and we all have these situations where we have a talented player that might be coming off contract, and that's the way our game is wired at the moment. Because we have free movement of players between clubs and they can sign somewhere else 12 months out, virtually 18 months out, 2 years out, you're looking at players that you want to extend and, I'm not talking about this case in particular, but their manager starts leaking to the media that he could, he might put himself on the open market, putting stress on the negotiation, et cetera, and you have to be careful about how quickly you react to that. I try not to react personally to November 1 deadlines or any news articles or snippets in the media saying this and that. What I try to do is build a relationship with the player over a period of time so that he doesn't want to leave and he doesn't feel as though he's going to leave and that we're going to work through this as we go along. I'm not sure why the Tigers wanted to rush in and make this big money offer right now anyway. It should have been the money would have been the last thing on the agenda for me down the track. It would have got to, proving over the next 6 or 8 months, and making the 8 and playing finals football and playing with Jerome Luai and playing with Api Coruscant and seeing where the club is. Look, we've bought Terrell May and, look at Jerome Buller, how he's going and, look at the team we're building and, sing some team songs in the dressing room, which they haven't done very much over the last 3 or 4 years and seeing, and comparing us to other clubs, because they're leapfrogging a few teams at the moment with the talent they've got in their roster.
And the trajectory of the club's undeniable.
Yeah, there's no doubt that things are improving, and to help build that over a period of time to a point where Lachlan Galvin does see a future there, and he doesn't want to leave the club, and he's ensconced in the Tiger culture and the teammates and everything like that. What he's done now to do it at this time. And probably brought on by the fact that the Tigers wanted to make and get it resolved at this time to put themselves, to make it clearer for their fans. I think by rushing it now, and 18 months before he comes off contract, 18 months before he comes off contract, and they're coming in and they're making a deal. If what they say is right, if that was the deal they're prepared to make, he's not worth that money at the moment.
No, but
we spoke about that last week. But this was obviously for their fans, their sponsors, for their own sanity, for their own peace of mind, and everything. They wanted it. They just wanted to get it off the the table and not have to be worrying about November 1 deadlines or competing with other clubs or answering questions of what's going to happen to him. He's 18 months away. Why do they need to be answering questions about Lachlan Galvin's future? What they should be doing is building a relationship with him. And this is not Lachlan Galvin. This is any young player coming through the club. Build a relationship with him so they're not thinking about leaving. They don't want to leave. There will come times where they have to leave. I mean, Abby Coruscant and Jerome Luai left the Panthers, and they had to leave to get the money they wanted to be paid. But they made it about the money. It wasn't because they wanted to leave the Panthers. This is different. I don't care about the money. I want to leave the club. I don't think the coach can get me to my next level of development. We went through the Ben Hunt situation at the Dragons where quite publicly he was seeking a release, but just kept turning up and performing. And if he was held to his contract, he was held to his contract until the end it became untenable for both and they left. But never at any time did we hear Ben Hunt question the coach or question the club or question the culture or what have you. He didn't divorce himself from what makes the team tick.
So he's going to have no shortage of suitors. My next question is, does the way this episode has played out, is it a deterrent, potential deterrent?
I think it will raise red flags. Yeah, absolutely, in people's mind. And I think there is an underlying, and whether or not it's fair to say this, that his future may already have been mapped out for him. I'm not saying he's signed a contract anywhere or even spoken to any other club at this stage, but, you don't do these sort of things unless you've got another plan in place. And I'm not saying Lachlan's got that, but I'm certainly his management's got that.
What you're saying, his management does have another plan in place?
I'm sure they would. They wouldn't go to this extent if they didn't have some sort of confident outlook as to where they thought, what he's looking for here is coaching and development. I'm sure they have a plan for where they think that might be. Otherwise, they wouldn't do this. Although I think it's blown up much larger than what they anticipated. And that's an error because it could only end one way. You saw the reaction from Cameron Smith on 100% footy the other night. As a player, I couldn't play with a player like that.
Yeah.
I don't think they saw that coming, and they should have. You can't come out publicly and say something like that, and I've never heard that before.
Well, that's poor advice. He's not being advised.
It may have been said behind closed doors before in struggling clubs that are running last and changing their coach. We've had situations where clubs have sacked their coach and a player said, "Well, I don't want to be coached by anyone else. I don't care who's coming in. I want out, or I've got a release clause in my contract that says if this is not the coach." It's just all the extraordinary things we see in contracts these days. But I don't think they read what was going to happen when you come out with a statement like that.
Is it a big problem in the game? Situations where players are poorly advised by management. Like, do you see that a lot?
Mm-hmm.
Is it a problem for the game?
Mm-hmm.
Are you talking? You've talked about the money that's being thrown at Galvin.
Yep.
That's a market forces thing, I suppose. But
yeah, that's a difficult question for me to answer because I have to deal with player managers all the time, and I have done for a long period of time. But I make no secret of the fact that some are easy to deal with and some are extremely difficult to deal with. And life's a lot easier when you're dealing with the easier ones. And there are plenty of players around, and there are plenty of player managers, and you can.
Are the easier ones the managers that have the best interests of the player at heart?
They understand the game. They understand. Yeah, they have a feel for the game and they have a feel for what life is like in clubland. And there are some managers who feel they own the player. The player is theirs. It's their property, and that's the difficult one to deal with. All right, but they come in all shapes and sizes and all levels of experience. And some think they're coaches, and some think they're doctors, and some think they're psychologists, and some think that they're the reason that the player is doing what he's doing. They come in all shapes and sizes, mate. Yeah, and
Well, Lachlan Galvin's management would be assuming that their client ends up in New South Wales.
Some of the managers are outstanding. They're great. They're great for their client. A at the forefront of all is contract negotiation and all that sort of thing. But there is also, where the player is going to be happy, where the player is content. The management really is there to look after his contract negotiation and his money, how he looks after his money, how he develops, that's essentially what the player manager is there for, and the welfare and looking after the player, et cetera, et cetera. But it gets into, some of the player managers think they're coaches, some of them think they're psychologists, some of them think they're selectors, some of them are telling you where they should play, what position they should play, who they should be playing with, what grade they should be playing, what level they should be training at. Like our player needs to be training full time. Our player should be in the NRL. Well, that's not your decision. That's our decision. Our player shouldn't be playing in that grade. He should be playing in this grade. That's not your decision. That's our decision. We develop the player. We coach the player, not you. I have those conversations all the time. All the time. And they're red flags if it goes on, that's you've got to be strong on that. But the game, and gets into a game-wide thing, the game has given the managers that power and has given the managers that belief, because they hold all the power in negotiations, particularly in our game the way it is today, with the scarcity of elite talent and the free movement of players between clubs, and now even wanting to break contracts. Now, where we talk about that, it's, people will see this as unethical. I've got a contract. How can I just go and break my contract? The clubs are just as guilty. The clubs are just as guilty as the player. The clubs make mistakes on players, or a player's not performing, or they see a better option, or they see a younger player coming through. We need to move a player on. Clubs break contracts. Clubs move contracts. The player always gets paid. I've done it myself. The player always gets paid. I never have the player not paid, all right, because he's got his contract entitlement. He gets his money. He's banked for it. That's all there is to it, unless there are discipline issues or other issues. But essentially the player gets paid. But the clubs, to manage their roster and their future roster and the shape of their team and what's coming through, often move players on and break contracts. So, they can't sit there and bellow when when the player wants to break the contract. I don't know where we go with this. I don't know how they fix that. I do think that we pay our younger players way too much money, and that the free market type situation that we've got is that I've seen many young players' careers made extremely difficult, particularly in their early years, because they're paid too much money with too much expectation, and that leads to scrutiny. And
I think Ivan Cleary came out and backed up your comments on that yesterday too when he was asked about it.
Absolutely, yeah. And we had those discussions often with young Nathan coming through. I mean, I'm getting a bit old. I can't remember all the details of it, but Nathan had a very modest graduation of his contract over a period of time. And Nathan has said to me even today, like, I'm so glad you didn't put me on big money early in my career. It was just all about I just wanted to play football.
But he's from a different mould, Nathan Cleary.
Yeah, he is. He was born into a professional footballer's family, But not all players and player managers see it that way, and it's to their detriment. We try to say to players, we try to say to parents, I try to say, don't, hasten slowly. If you're good enough, the money will come. If you're good enough, the opportunities will come. They've got a long way to go. You don't see that. People want to rush. They want to get in there straight away, and it's and their inexperience in that matter is hard to manage sometimes.
So I wonder how Lachlan Galvin's management will feel if they see him running around for West for the next 2 seasons.
Well, I don't think that will happen.
You think he'll leave?
I think he'll have to.
Do you think it's right that a player can leave a club under these circumstances and earn a significantly increased salary elsewhere?
Well, that's the system we operate under. It shouldn't happen. Nor should we be in this position. I've always got this belief. I said even last year, even though he was the Rookie of the Year, I said I don't think he should be playing NRL at the moment. I think for his long-term development, that's not necessarily where he needs to be, particularly in a team that was running last in the competition. I said he's good enough to get above all that, but a lot of players aren't.
Yeah.
And I've always held the belief, and my beliefs are very radical, and no one wants to support them, but I still think they're in the best long-term interest of the game. And a lot of what I comment on over the period of time is what I believe is in the best interest of the game. I don't think any player should be playing NRL before the age of 20 or 21, ever.
Really?
Absolutely. And I think we should have rookie contracts. I think their first couple of years in the top grade should be restricted to a rookie contract where everyone gets the same thing.
What's a rookie contract? A set amount of income.
Set amount of income, and restricting them playing NRL, which would beef up your pathways competitions and would provide a whole new product. They do it overseas. I don't see why we can't do it here, but no one's going to take that step. No one's going to, and I'm not saying do it tomorrow. I would phase it in. I'd be saying to 13-year-old kids today, your era are not going to play NRL till they're 20 years of age, so get ready for it. And phase it in over the next 6 or 7 years. But no one wants to make that decision and do it. And I think it would save a hell of a lot of the issues that we have around pathways and player managers and development and recruitment. And some kid scores a try in the under-14s. There are managers jumping the fence after the game to find out his number and phone number. It's terrible. And for a lot of the times it might be the parents' first experience at anything like this, and they get taunted or intimidated by it. The managers ringing them up for 15-year-old kids. It's ridiculous. We shouldn't have that. We shouldn't have that. And that was my trip to Coffs Harbour yesterday. Was not to recruit. Was just to advise to the parents. Don't get ahead of yourselves and don't get caught up in all of this. He's got plenty of time. Look after his schooling. Put him in a good environment where he's getting some schooling and go from there. Because already at even such a young age, he's got clubs courting him and reaching out. It's the demand for players and the competition for players is so intense out there.
Lastly,
particularly in players in certain positions.
Lastly on this, it's pretty hard to fault the West Tigers' actions.
Strong. And I think that's what the West Tigers fans are applauding at the moment.
Absolutely.
As much as it hurts, it's a real statement. And I could see that happening on Monday night because I just said it's untenable. Cameron Smith said it's untenable. He said it from a player's perspective, and I'm sort of saying it from a club, a coach, and a management perspective. It's untenable. You can't come out publicly and say that. Even if you wanted to have that conversation behind closed doors. I still haven't had an answer. Who leaked that to the media? Who told the media that was said at the meeting between the player manager and the club? Who leaked that bit of information? And if it was the club, then they got on the front foot straight away and knew what the next 24 hours was going to look like. And I think that's what the West Tigers fans are probably feeling because they've been used. I mean, West Tigers went through this years ago with Tedesco and Aaron Woods and Mitchell Moses.
I think it's the same management company.
They had the heart ripped out of the club with 3 of their young emerging players, taken away from them at a vital time. And look where that spiralled the club over the next 4 or 5 years. And they won 3 wooden spoons in a row. And while those players went on and became representative class players and had great careers, that's not the only reason that the West Tigers spiralled out of control. And Shane Richardson's come in and given them a strong management, and he knows how a club should be built over a period of time. And he's made some big decisions. He's sacked a lot of players, and he's moved his roster around, and he's backed his coach, and they've shown great solidarity on a number of fronts, and they've shown real solidarity here. And the senior player group, to their credit, and I'm sure it was painful for them. I'm sure they see the potential in Lachlan Galvin and their teammates, but we can't walk past that. We can't accept that. If you're endorsing that, I was surprised. I said on 100% footy, I doubt Lachlan Galvin is endorsing this. I doubt that he's saying that. And I said he probably needs to speak to let us know whether or not he agrees with this or not. Well, he stood up and made a statement and said, yeah, that's the reason I want out. So he's now got to live with the consequences, I guess.
Yeah.
And I don't want to pile any more on him because I think when he wakes up this morning, he's, as I say, my concern right at the moment would be for his welfare. My immediate concern is for his welfare right at the moment.
Well, I don't think too many 19-year-old kids should have to deal with this.
No, they shouldn't.
I've got an 18-year-old son. I can't imagine him putting up with this amount of pressure.
And the system has opened it up to this. As a game, we need to look at this, all right? Because our system opens itself to this. Our system allows this to happen. This shouldn't be allowed to happen. And that's wrong. This is now an extreme example of where it gets to. We deal with stuff all the time. Clubs deal with stuff all the time that fans and people never really hear about. But now something like this is made public and been played out the way it is. And The senior players, and they need to be careful too. I mean, they need to take some care for the player as well. They've made their statement, but at the same time, they need to put the arm around the kid too and say, listen, you're okay and we need to move on. Whatever ever happens from now, we're going to make sure the kid's all right. And I hope or I fear that, it could have long-lasting effects.
All right, let's move on. There's a lot to unpack there, but I think we've covered it off pretty well. Ask Gus. Blake Brayley has been one of the Sharks' best players for the past 2 seasons. In fact, he's won the Porter Gallon medal for the last 2 seasons. Can he finally get a crack at the New South Wales team this year?
Yeah, I think he's... I was nodding yes for yes, no then. Well, he's a terrific player. I mean, I'm sure he's on the depth chart somewhere. If you go into the Origin war room at the moment, looking at options they've probably got 5 or 6 players in every position there that with injury and suspension they would need to call on. They're a very talented family. All the boys that have come through are all very talented. He's performing with a top 4 team and he's a good player and he wouldn't be out of place. I'm sure he's on the depth chart somewhere if something happens.
So Reece Robson was the series-winning hooker last year.
Yep.
But knowing what you know about Laurie Daly, I'm wondering whether Coruscant might come back into the mix. So, in fact, you can't knock, and I'm not in any way knocking the selection of Reece Robson because he's a terrific player, but it seems strange that Coruscant kind of disappeared out of the equation last year.
We're going to talk Origin selections, are we? I don't like talking Origin selections.
No, just a thought on that.
They've got plenty of good options. Appy Coruscant is a great option. Reece Robson's proven himself. Young Brayley would do a job if they asked him to do it. Yeah, they've got some good options around
there. Who's the fastest player you've ever coached? Asked Gary Theodore.
Shane Werrett.
Oh, yes. He won a Stall gift, didn't he?
I don't know. He was a great sprinter. He could run. We caused an upset at Brookvale Oval one day, and I was coaching the Roosters, and Shane Werrett, I didn't put in the program. I think he wouldn't have jumped number 56 or something.
I used to love it when they wear obscene numbers on the jumpers.
We didn't put him in the program, and Manly were a good side. And what year was this? 1995, I think. They were going for a record number of wins. Anyway, we went to Brookvale Oval, and I had a player called Andrew Walker who was playing 5'8", who had a big kick on him, and I said to our team, I said, we've got to do something that they're not ready for. So I said, second tackle, every set we get the ball in our half. I don't care where it is because Andrew had such a big kick on him. I want you to kick it down the right-hand side of the field, and Shane Werrett, you're going to chase it. We're not going to tell anyone Shane Werrett's playing, and we'll make them keep having to run back. I think they had Gillespie's and Koseks and all their big forwards, Mark Carroll's and all those big forwards. And I said, we'll just keep turning them around. We'll turn them around, and we'll get Andrew Walker to kick it. Doesn't matter what tackle it is. We'll back our fitness. But Shane, you've got to be the one to chase it. And we didn't even put him in the program. I remember after the game, Bozo came to me. He said, number 55, where the hell did you get him from? And he was brilliant. He was the fastest player. Yeah, he was a professional sprinter playing football. Good bloke too.
There you have it. Curtis Hayward, I reckon Curtis is a bit old school. With City Country gone, why not have a New South Wales hopefuls versus Queensland hopefuls match?
Yeah, no.
Did you ever coach City Origin?
Did I?
Yeah.
Yeah, we had to. Yeah, in the old days, if you're a New South Wales coach, you coach the City side.
Oh, okay.
So my first stint from 1992 to 1996, where they had City Country. Did we have it in 96? I can't remember. But anyway, most of those years you'd coach City first, and you'd coach City versus Country. And, a lot of the country blokes you wanted in the side too. So it was pretty hard to coach the City versus the Country, but we gave everyone a chance.
See, back in the 90s, that was my formative time watching the game. Some of those City versus Country teams were unbelievable sides.
We used to have City seconds versus Country seconds.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was a big thing to get picked for City.
But they were like you have a look at some of the lineups.
But it was only a Sydney competition though. We were only a Sydney competition back in those days, and Country Rugby League was very, very strong, very strong. And for Country Rugby League players, the fellas that were picked for Country were in the country, They were playing in the country. They weren't playing in the competition here. City origin and country origin is completely different. Right?
Yes.
And we had to do that because country rugby league wasn't producing. All the kids that were in the country were already in the systems. They were down playing lower grades here. But in the old days, the origin, the countryside
was a country team.
Was a country team. They came from the country. And that's how a lot of them made their way into the top grade rugby leagues here, by impressing in city country games.
And there were some examples of blokes that got picked in the country team that got picked in the state side too, weren't there?
Yeah,
that weren't playing in the city premiership.
Absolutely. And if they moved from the country to the city, they played for City the next time the rep sides were on. Mick Cronin might have been an example of that. I think he played for country and then came to the city and played for City. Peter Sterling would have done that, played for country and came back and played for the City. And then because there was so little rugby league or less rugby league being played in country areas, most of the good footballers were gravitating towards the major competition and the major clubs. That's when they had to make a country origin, city origin. Everyone was playing virtually in the major competition here. And we said, well, if you started in the country, you can play for country. And it got to a point a few years ago, or in the final years of City country, City was struggling to put a team together. I remember Brad Fittler calling them, and he rang me up one night and he said, I can't get a team. I said, why haven't you got a team? He said, we haven't got enough players to qualify. And I said to him, well, I've got 6 or 7 blokes here to qualify. Take all these. He said, you'll let them play.
Save the game.
He said, you'll let them play. I said, of course I will. Of course I will. James Tarmo and
Tyron Peter.
I said, take them. I want them all to play rep football. Take them all. He said, oh, God, thank you. And they went off and played in the city country.
I'll tell you, it was at Mudgee because I called the game. Gal played. All those blokes pretty much saved the game.
I think they won. I think they won too.
They may well have won.
Yeah. I said, I got 6 or 7 here that qualified. But there wasn't enough city team. There wasn't enough teams here in Sydney that were producing players that qualified for City. We're buying players from New Zealand. We're buying players from Queensland.
It didn't help that the clubs wouldn't let most of them play City country.
Well, it didn't help either, but I said, no. I said, come and take our players. And at the time, our players needed to play representative football. It really helped us. Wonga Blake and those sort of players.
That was AskGus. Thanks to the Tab. The NRL season is here. We're right into the thick of things now. It is the best time in sport, and Tab has the best app in sport. Tab, we are on.
What's gambling really costing you? For free and confidential support, call the number on the screen or visit the website.
6 tackle trivia. You ready?
Yeah.
You are on a roll with this. There have been a total of 13 NRL games played at TIO Stadium in Darwin. I didn't realise they've had so many. Para have been going there for over a decade now.
Mm.
The first game was actually between the Roosters and the Cowboys back in 2012.
Right.
Can you tell me who the coaches were of those teams?
In 2012.
Roosters and Cowboys. In 2012.
In Darwin. They weren't the first games in Darwin.
Well,
I coached games in Darwin back in the 90s.
But TIO Stadium.
Oh, is that? Well, it's the same place, isn't it? Or does they just give it a new name?
Maybe. You're getting, look,
I coached games back in the 90s. I coached a Penrith team that went there early 1991. 91, I think.
You sure? Maybe it wasn't the same stadium.
How many stadiums are there in Darwin? It looks the same on TV.
For the purposes of this exercise.
Is this our young producer who thought the time began, in year 2000?
Well, he may well be right yet. Let's not throw him under the bus.
Right.
They played a cricket test in Darwin,
Yeah.
Australia played Bangladesh there.
Yeah.
Anyway, who coached the Roosters? I think the tenor of the question is who were the coaches of the Roosters and the Cowboys in 2012?
In 2012, the Roosters. Well, you want me to answer it?
Yeah, well, I'd like you to answer on the other side of this.
I need thinking music.
Fans always ask, Lozza, what was the best era of league? And I tell them, nothing beats the line-breaking, flick-passing, goose-stepping, Vegas-flying, turbo try-scoring, origin drought-breaking, simply the best era of footy we're in right now. And with more market stats and insights, it's easy to enjoy the best era in footy with the best app in footy.
Tab. We're on. What's gambling really costing you? For free and confidential support, visit gamblinghelponline.org.au.
TIO Stadium, Darwin. Enter. Marara Oval. That's where they play the cricket test. So TIO is a commercial brand.
I'm sure it's where we played in the 90s.
The ground opened in 1991. He's got you, Jordan.
Yeah.
History.
Yeah, I coached a Penrith team up there. I coached a Roosters team up there in 95. We went up there.
Rugby league.
Anyway, 2012, the coaches for Roosters, 2012, let me get this right. 2012, I don't think Trent Robinson had started, had he?
Nope.
I think it would have been 2012. Let me get this right. 2012. I think it's either Chris Anderson or Brian Smith. I'm going to say Brian Smith.
Correct. Well done. Brian Smith.
Yeah.
Who got the Roosters to a grand final?
Yeah, they were wooden spoon the year before and grand final the next year.
It's quite the turnaround. And who was the Cowboys coach?
Cowboys coach at that time would have been, it's at the back end of Neil Henry and the start of Paul Green. So I'm going to say it's Neil Henry or
Neil
Paul
Henry.
Green.
Well done. Yeah. He's hard to beat, my man. There's been 2 cricket tests played at Marara Oval, or as they call it when they play test matches there, the Darwin Cricket Ground.
All right.
Australia played Bangladesh and it played Sri Lanka. And Jordan is trying to prove you wrong. Mate, 1992, they've been playing. Anyway, move on. The Auction House, we've got 1 position, 2 players left.
Mm-hmm.
You've sent the country into debt. We've got interest rates are about to be slashed.
Need 70 million in the salary cap.
And you've still got 2 centres.
2 centres. So who would get the most money as a centre? Who would get the most money if it went to auction?
This is tricky because one of them might be at your club.
Yeah, well, I'm quite sure. I'm quite sure. He's well paid, but it's extremely good value. I would imagine Stephen Crichton would be high on everyone's list. I think he would definitely be one centre.
I'll tell you whose stocks have risen. I mean, he's always been a good player, but the last 2 years, Herbie Farnworth.
Yeah, very good player. Extremely good player. I think he's even a better fullback. I think he would be a better fullback. I think he's probably wasted a little bit in the centres.
They got a pretty handy fullback.
I think Stephen Crichton is the premier centre in the game. I think he would bring the most money of any centre in the game. He's also got the ability to kick goals. His leadership, his captaincy. I think he's. But there's some very good ones around. I'd imagine there'd be a lineup to sign a player like Latrell Mitchell and play him in the centres. That
was going to be my next point. It's interesting because New South Wales at Origin level have been really playing fullbacks in the centres.
Yeah.
Turbo's played all his football there.
Yeah. But I think purely as a centre, if it went up for auction, I mean, Latrell might have already gone as a fullback before he gets to that. He might even go as a 5'8" after he's played a few games there. We don't know, but I think probably Stephen Crichton. Then you're looking at Latrell Mitchell. Who else have we got? Herbie Farnsworth has been really good.
Bradman Best, Katoni Staggs, Valentine Holmes.
Yeah, there's some good ones there. But I think the 2 that would bring the most money would be Stephen Crichton and Latrell Mitchell.
See, it's interesting.
And both very, very accomplished goal kickers, which adds to it.
How much do you pay? How much do you spend on centres?
Depends who they are, and where else your money is in the competition in your lineup. It's very, very difficult because the role of the fullback has been the role of the wingers have become so important in the game. Wingers have sort of increased in value. Your playmakers, your half 5'8", your 9 and your 1 have sort of increased in value. People are paying big money for front rowers. They're paying big money for a lock forward that can ball play because everyone wants one of those. You can't. Sometimes you've got to manufacture one. Some are better than others, but I think if you lined everyone up, if everyone was off contract and the whole game had to bid on centres, I think that obviously Stephen Crichton and probably Latrell Mitchell would bring the first 2 bought. They'll be the first 2 bought by most clubs. You'd have to ask Latrell if he wanted to play centre though.
$1 million bucks?
Eh?
Million?
Oh yeah, at least. Yeah.
At least?
Yeah. Yeah, should say that because I'm not paying Stephen that at the moment. But
he knows, he's listening.
He knows this is all for fun.
Oh, did Zach Lomax get back to you, by the way?
No, nothing.
Nothing?
Nothing in the mail, no.
Not a bunch of flowers or a box of chocolates?
He wanted $1 million price tag and I wouldn't give it to him.
Righto. Well, you can tell us how much you're going to pay those two and then we'll move on. And we'll wrap up our auction.
Yep. Someone would pay him a lot of money. They would pay him a lot of money.
Right, I put $1 million next to him and we'll move on.
Yep.
All right, round 7. Round 7? Where's this gone? Let's have a preview of all the action thanks to Tab. We kick it off with Thursday night footy. They're back at home again.
Yeah.
They've had 2 away games.
Yep.
5 home, 2 away. Manly, that is.
It's been a good run, hasn't
Four
it?
Pines Brookie. With respect to team news, Jason Subs back. Clayton Fulalo drops out. Christian Tuipulotu misses for the Dragons, so Matt Fino goes onto the wing. That's the only change to their lineup. The betting odds, correct as of 6:30 Wednesday morning, thanks to Tab. Manly $1.60, Dragons at $2.35.
Mm-hmm.
They're a bit plain over in Perth, I thought, Manly. I mean, they hung in.
Yeah, I made the point that they were pretty ordinary over in New Zealand too when they played against the Warriors. They were soundly beaten there, and then they've travelled to Perth and they were nowhere near their best on the weekend.
Yeah, they got pumped by Melbourne.
It was a tight game, and, I think that...
but Melbourne blew them away at home.
Yeah, I give the Dragon a real chance in this game. Their attack's improving. They're starting to score some points, which helps. I'm sure they're working on their defence as well. I give them a real chance. Can they beat Manly at Brookvale? Well, it's Thursday night. It's not Sunday afternoon. It's Thursday night. It's hard to tip against the Sea Eagle at Brookvale. I think there's a real chance for an upset here. I'll go just looking at the team. I'd feel much more comfortable if Tommy was playing.
Yeah, I think Manly would too.
Yeah, I think, Dragons can get a lot of confidence out of that, and they're much better as an underdog than a favourite. I think Dragon can upset them. I'm not sure that Manly are in peak form at the moment.
I can't imagine the Dragons have won too often at Brookie.
I don't think anyone wins too often at Brookvale.
Good point. Dragon?
I think Dragon's got a real hope there.
Okay. Upset to start Easter weekend. Now, Good Friday footy, 2 games, the first of which is at 4 o'clock. You'll see both of them on 9, so we've got 4 games coming to you live and free this weekend, and we know it's going to be a bumper crowd. When Canterbury take on South Sydney, 2 of the game's great clubs, and the great news for the Dogs is that Matt Burton is definitely back from a knee injury and Viliami Kikau is on the extended bench, which pushes Bailey Hayward back to the bench. He's been terrific. I love him as a player, little Bailey Hayward.
Yeah,
he looks tough.
Yeah, we've extended him out for another year. He covers a number of positions, and I think he's hopefully a long-termer with the club, a local junior.
Excellent.
And playing extremely well. We've extended his contract out. For South Sydney, Campbell Graham comes back. And so too Cody Walker's been named.
And Lewis Dodd is going to make his NRL debut on the bench.
He's on the bench at number 14. I see that Joshua Schuster has made his way on the extended reserves bench as well.
Good on him. Sean Keppie's available. He got a downgrade at the judiciary.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen very often.
Well, he should never have been penalised, let alone sent off. Then charged, crikey. Anyway, I'm glad he got off because hopefully that's setting a new standard.
South Dead Set should have won last week. My goodness, they bottled that.
They're dangerous, South Sydney. The old coach, you've got to be wary of the old coach.
All right, Bulldogs $1.30, Rabbitohs $3.50.
Let's hope we get a really big crowd for Good Friday.
It'll be great. I hear you're going to pick up a toffee apple to take to the footy.
Yeah.
You're the only bloke in the world that still eats a toffee apple. Do they even sell them at the show? I haven't seen a toffee apple in 25 years.
I'm going to find out. It's probably a health risk now, is it?
Probably. You'll have to walk in with a big water fairy floss instead.
I'll have to sue my parents for the way I was mistreated as a child, having toffee apples and fairy floss.
Who ever thought to coat an apple in
toffee?
How
dare they feed me all that rubbish?
Who came up with the idea of going, here's an apple, let's dunk it in sugar?
Oh, yeah, toffee apple. Mum used to make toffee apples.
Really?
Yeah, we only ever used to get them at the Easter show, and Mum said, I can make them.
What are the other things that you only get at the Easter show? Like fresh lemonade, authentic lemonade, which is delicious.
Yeah. Show bags.
Dagwood dogs. You don't often...
Yeah.
Oh, the Dagwood dogs are around.
Is it a Dagwood dog or a Pluto pup? What's the difference?
I don't think there is a difference.
Is there?
But the food's getting pretty ritzy at the Easter show now.
Is it?
Well, the continuous call team blokes had lobster delivered to them at the weekend.
Mm.
Can you imagine lobster at the Easter show?
Back years ago when I was working with 2UE, Radio 2UE back in, we used to broadcast out of the Easter show. And we had a whole week of eating that stuff.
Oh,
that's all we ate all day.
Just
was
feel awful.
Pluto pups.
Yeah.
Fairy floss. I love fairy floss.
Well, you can still get that.
And toffee apples.
You need to take some fairy floss to the front. I want to see you walk in with the big barrel of fairy floss.
Well, there'll be plenty of kids walking into Acor on the weekend with fairy floss and toffee apples, I'm telling you.
I'm going to take the kids next week.
Have a toffee apple. Not the green one, the red one. You've got to have the red toffee, not the green
I'm not
toffee.
having that. I'll buy you a show bag, though. You want a Cadbury show bag?
Yeah. It was the only way I'd eat a green apple. I can't eat a green apple otherwise, but if it was caked in red toffee, I was sweet with that.
So was your dentist. Yeah. Friday night footy.
My parents mistreated me.
Oh, I think you turned out okay. Don't know about your teeth, though. I'm sure it'll be sold out at Suncorp. For Dolphin Melbourne, Dolphin 4.20, Storm $1, pardon me, Storm $1.23, and that's probably the right price given the way that they're travelling at the moment. Christian Wolf has the same 17 that beat the Panthers. In fact, two teams in a bit of form, and Jerome Hughes has been named to play despite that shoulder problem. Suafailongo to the wing for his first appearance of the season, Anderson to the centres because Moses Leo has a shoulder injury.
Yeah, so we're sort of past that mark. I said, right from the start, after 6 rounds, everyone wins one, everyone loses one. People get into their stride. People that don't handle the first couple of weeks can get into their stride. And I think most teams are now settling into the rhythm of playing football and home and away football and training and recovery and getting into their games, and team lists are starting to settle down. They've experimented with a few positions and maybe had some players out injured, what have you, or players that had restricted off seasons are starting to play their way into game fitness. And a lot of the teams are settling down. So sides like the Cowboys and Dolphins have started to put a couple of wins together, and as they settle into their rhythm. And one team that is settling into their rhythm is the Dolphins. Extremely impressive the other night against the Panthers, and they come into this with confidence, playing at Suncorp Stadium, a ground where the Storm have an extraordinary record themselves. Their record anywhere is very, very good, and they've just got this explosiveness about them that, when they come out and turn it on early in the game, the scoreboard just runs away from you and the game is over by half time. And they've done that a couple of times this season already. I don't think that will happen against the Dolphins. I think they'll be far more alerted, but I just can't see them matching it with the premiership favourites at the moment. The Storm are in good form. They're pretty much at full strength. Where is Asafa Solomona? Injured or suspended? Or
no,
he's not even in the top 22 at the moment.
He had the head knock.
That was some time ago.
That was
he didn't
against
play
Penrith.
He didn't play last week.
No.
Yeah, so Storm.
So Warbrick and Nelson both out with concussion, and both of them are extended concussions.
Yep.
Saturday 5:30. I'm interested here, very interested. Although the Warriors have been battered with injury, they get no luck with injuries. The Warriors, they seem to get smashed every year. Well, they're hosting the Bronco. They're $3 outsiders. Brisbane are $1.40 at Go Media Stadium. So, James Fisher-Harris is out. Jackson Ford into the front row. Jacob Laban to the bench. Nickel Clustar gone. Oh, jeez, they have been smashed. Tane to a Picky to fullback. Tamari Martin's on the bench. Kirk Capel to the centres. So look, they're kind of filling in where they can there. And Jordan Ricky's back from suspension. So Gajeski, who is suspended, is replaced by him. The only change for Brisbane. Yeah,
I think Broncos will be too strong. Kirk Capel playing in the centres. Up against Katoni Staggs, he'll have his hands full, won't he? Yeah, no, Broncos fairly confidently there.
They've got so many players out. Poor old Warriors. Now, here's an interesting game. 7:30, Saturday night, Allianz Stadium. Roosters hosting the Panthers after they upset them in spectacular fashion at Combank Stadium earlier in the year. Well, they meet again, and they do so at the Roosters' home ground. Mm-hmm. Nwanganitawasi, back from a calf injury, and comes into the centres because Billy Smith is suspended. There are changes for Penrith. Mitch Kenny returns from a shoulder injury. Now, Casey McLean and Luke Garner form a new centre combination, with Isaac Tung will move to the bench and Tom Jenkins to the wing. Mm-hmm. So he's clearly seeking to address that defensive deficiency out wide that's plagued Penrith all season long. They have not won a game other than Vegas. Quite incredible.
Yeah, you wouldn't have imagined that. They beat the Shark in Vegas earlier in the season, and we thought it was just going to be business as usual. But it hasn't worked out that way. They haven't won a game since they come home. Look, you've just got to start to believe your eyes, I think, a little bit. I was concerned for the Panthers last week, looking at that Dolphins back line and the back line that the Panthers put up. And again this week, Alamonte, Garner, Casey McLean, Jenkins, Blaze Talangi. There is an inexperience there. There's players playing out of position there. They're still trying to find their feet. And up against Tupou, Robert Toyer, Dominic Young, Sandon Smith. I thought Hugo Savala was great the other night. And this is one of the things that has confused me a little bit about the Roosters as to why it's taken so long to give a player like that a really good crack at it. His kicking game was great. He's a Rooster kid that's come through the system, and you've just got to trust them. And I think it had a whole different look about it the other night, and they deserved their win over the Bronco. Now, earlier this year, they come off a 50-point flogging, missing a number of players to actually upset the Panthers in a high-scoring game. What was it,
38-34 or something?
38-34 or something. I think this one will be different. I'm still not seeing... I'm still worried about the back line for the Panthers, experience, and the other part that's getting them is the try scoring. They're not scoring enough points at the moment either, it's particularly when they need them. Mitch Kenny will make a huge difference coming back into the team. Gee whiz, you've got to believe your eyes, don't you? They're in a hole, the Panther. I'm going to tip Rooster.
Wow, could you imagine if they lost 6 straight? And they can, don't worry about that. 2 p.m. Sunday, Seabus Super Stadium, Titans versus the Raiders. Did I tell you the Roosters are $2.25 outsiders and the Panthers are $1.65 favourites?
You didn't say that.
Well, there you go. Titans outsiders at home, $2.15. Raiders $1.70. Raiders impressive, continuing to impress. But Tino's back from suspension.
Yep.
It's the main change for the Gold Coast. And Zach Hosking is back after missing 4 games with a hand injury. So Simi Sasangi goes to the reserves. Well, he's a big inclusion on the bench because he's a good player. They're going good, the Raiders.
They are. They're a serious football team. I said right from the start of the year when we saw them in Vegas, very fit and very fast. They were way too good for Parramatta the other night. They've got plenty of points in them. They're resilient. They defend well. And I guess we need to see the Titans show us something before we go tipping them again. I look at their team and I look at all the talent in that team. Look at this forward pack. Fodawaker, Verrills, Campbell Gillard, Fafita, Fermor, Fasua Malaawi. My God.
It's incredible, isn't it?
That is an incredible forward pack. Look at the speed and the,
But nothing ever changes with the Titans.
Well, they were down there in Wollongong the other night, and it was 6-4 against the Dragons. They had a try disallowed, which was ridiculous, and then they were sort of there, and then in the 5 minutes or so before half-time, they just pricked like a balloon.
Oh, terrible.
And the score just ran away from them, and they never looked like recovering after that. It's just they just have these periods in the game where they're just the brain just switches off. We need to see some winning form from the Titans before we can tip them. And
where's Kieran Foran?
He's injured. He did a pec earlier in the season, round 1 or something. A pec? Well, I think it was a pec injury, round 1.
He's the sort of bloke they need back in there.
They're a talented team, the Titans. They're a talented team.
You must have shares in the Gold Coast.
I think they're a talented team. I really think they're a talented team. Look at that forward pack, my God.
4 in round 9, bicep.
Campbell, Brims, yeah. No, I'm tipping Raider. They're going too well.
All right, McDonald Jones Stadium, Sunday footy on 9, on air from 3, kick-off at 4 o'clock. Newcastle, my goodness, how bad were they on Sunday? Mind you, they do have half a side out.
Yep.
$3.25 outsiders against the Sharks at $1.35. Now, back for Newcastle comes Tyson Gamble, who's going to play at halfback. James Schiller comes onto the wing. Phoenix Crosland goes to hooker. Brayley to the bench. Frizzell goes to prop. Tyrone Thompson, who made his NRL debut last week, is on the bench. Matt Croker starts at lock. So some significant changes there for Newcastle. Adam Fanua-Blake has been named to play despite leaving the field with a groin problem in Perth. The Sharks stick with the same squad that got the job done against Manly.
Yeah, I'm too a little confused by the Knights. Again, yes, they did have some injury problems. Again, they've made a change in the halves. It seems every fortnight they're making a change to their 7 and their 6, trying to find the right answer, don't they? But I like Tyson Gamble. I think he's a competitive little bugger, and he gives them that sort of a little bit more defensive resolve. Look, they haven't been getting absolutely flogged. They've just struggled to score points is their problem. You know, like it's not embarrassingly bad. It's just in attack, they're just not getting the points. And with a player like Carlin Ponga in the side, that's really confusing.
They can't get him into the game.
No. And that's probably why Tyson Gamble's been brought in the way he has. It's hard to tip the Knights given what they're showing us. So I'll have to tip the Shark there at the moment.
And then another big clash on Easter Monday. Tigers, after a week of drama, will be galvanised. Well, one thing we know.
Wow.
They're going to all be playing for the coach.
Wow.
$1.70 against Parramatta, who are $2.15. And the sole reason they're so short in the market is that Mitchell Moses has been named to play his first game of the year.
Will he play?
Well, he's been named in the 7. He hasn't been named in 22.
No.
He's in. He's in, baby.
Well, that's going to make a huge difference to them. A huge difference to them. Now, Mitchell Moses was giving off bad signals a few weeks ago when we interviewed him on Channel 9. He sort of didn't know when he was going to be back. In fact, there was sort of like a forlorn look on his face saying, well, I don't know when this is going to be right. And then all of a sudden, you know, here he is a few weeks later and he's made himself available to play.
They've got, I should mention, they do have the bye next week. So the temptation might have been there to give him an extra fortnight, but maybe there are seasons at a point where they have to get him in.
Yeah. Dean Hawkins is on an extended bench, number 20. They haven't even got him in the 17, which means they're not even having that much coverage for him.
He's playing, baby.
It looks like he's playing, and that'll make a huge difference for them. But I can't imagine there won't be anything but a reaction from the West Tigers players who are in good form, they're winning form, and, you know...
They played good on Sunday.
What's happened this week is, I guess, a show of solidarity, and they're virtually committed to coming out and putting in a performance, which I'm sure they will. Adam Dewey is extremely experienced. He's a good player. He and Jerome Luai give the halves a far more experienced look about them. It even frees Jerome Luai up a little bit because Adam Dewey can control a lot of the game himself as well. Brent Naden finds his way back into the starting lineup. Stafford Toa's in really good form. Jareem Buller is such a talent. The forwards are working really well. It's a really good working man's pack at the moment. Terrell May and Polo and Fainu, Seyfarth, Twal, they're just all workers. They work very hard. They can probably outwork Parramatta there, but Mitchell Moses will make a huge difference, a massive difference to this Parramatta team, and it's something West Tigers will have to contend with. But I'll go with Tiger to win the Easter Monday clash. So, on the weekend, I think Dragon can upset Sea Eagle at Brookvale. I might be mad there. I might have slipped on the wrong side of the bed there. Dragon to beat Sea Eagle. I'm going to tip Storm to beat Dolphin. I'm going to tip Bronco to beat Warrior. Rooster to upset Panther. Got to believe your eyes. That's all you can believe. Raider to beat Titan. Shark to beat Knight. And Tiger to beat Eel. Other tips for the weekend, and Cowboys get a rest. Another 2 points for them.
They can eat chocolate all weekend.
Yep, Easter eggs. We're getting close to Magic Round, aren't we? We've got Anzac Day coming up. Then we've got Magic Round. Got some big football coming up.
I better get to Kmart and get myself some. I haven't bought any Easter eggs for anyone yet. Thanks, Gus. Big week in footy.
Thank you, Matthew.
Funny game, this.
It is. Very funny game.
That's Six Tackles with Gus for another week. Thursday night, footy. 7:30 p.m. on air tomorrow night. 2 games on Friday. Friday afternoon, Friday evening, and then Sunday afternoon footy with Newcastle hosting the Sharks, and we're back next Wednesday. Look forward to your company then.